I want you to try something for me. For the next 15 minutes, try not to yawn. That's the whole challenge. Sounds easy, right? Except I'm about to spend this entire video saying one specific word over and over again, showing you the magic of that word, getting you to think about it, feel it, picture it, and if the research is right, a lot of you are going to lose. Badly. In fact, some of you already felt it just now, that little tickle at the back of your throat, that pull in your jaw, the second I said the word yawn. If that's you, drop a caught one in the comments, because I genuinely want to see how fast this thing spreads through the people watching. So let me ask you the question that scientists have been fighting about for literally thousands of years. Why do we do this? Why does your body, several times a day, without asking permission, force you to open your mouth as wide as it goes and suck in a huge lungful of air? It seems like such a small, dumb little thing, but when you actually start pulling on the thread, it gets weird fast. Because the truth is, some of the smartest researchers on the planet still don't fully agree on why you yawn. And the reason it's contagious? That opens up a door into empathy, into your brain, and into a personality trait that most people really don't want to fail the test for. We'll get to that. Stick around, because the ending genuinely changes how you'll think about the next person who yawns near you. But first, let's kill the answer you already think is correct. Because almost everyone, if you ask them why we yawn, says the same thing. Oh, it's when your body needs more oxygen, right? You're tired, your breathing's gone shallow, your oxygen drops, so you take one big gulp to top yourself back up. It sounds perfect. It sounds obvious. Your gym teacher probably told you that, and it is almost certainly wrong. Back in the 1980s, a researcher named Robert Provine decided to actually test it instead of just assuming, and the experiment was simple. If yawning is about oxygen, then giving people more oxygen should make them yawn less. And loading them up with carbon dioxide, the stuff you're supposed to be getting rid of, should make them yawn more. So he had people breathe air with extra oxygen in it. Nothing happened. They didn't yawn any less. Then he had them breathe air with more carbon dioxide. And that didn't crank up their yawning the way the theory predicted either. The oxygen explanation, the one basically everyone believes, just didn't hold up. Your body has a much faster, much more reliable way to get more oxygen. It's called breathing harder. You do it when you run. You don't stop and yawn your way up a flight of stairs. So if it's not about oxygen and the evidence says it really isn't, then what on earth is going on? This is where the leading theory today gets kind of beautiful, and it's about temperature. The idea is that yawning cools your brain down. Now stay with me, because this makes more sense than it sounds. Your brain is an incredibly hungry, incredibly hot little organ. It's only about 2% of your body weight, but it burns through something like 20% of your energy, and all that activity generates heat. And your brain is fussy. It works best inside a very narrow temperature range. Push it even a little too warm and performance starts to slip. You get foggy, sluggish, slow. So the theory, championed by a researcher named Andrew Gallup, is that a yawn is basically your skull's built-in radiator kicking on. Think about what actually happens when you yawn. You stretch your jaw wide, which pulls on the muscles and the blood vessels around your skull and cranks up blood flow through the region, almost like flushing warm coolant out of an engine. At the same time, you're pulling in this big rush of air, and if that air is cooler than you are, it acts like the cold water running through a car radiator, carrying heat away. Flush the warm blood, pull in cool air, and your brain gets a little temperature reset. A yawn, under this theory, is a cooling mechanism. And the wild thing is, they've tested this in ways you can actually feel. In one set of experiments, they had people hold packs against their forehead. When people held a warm pack, or a room temperature one, they yawned a lot at the Contagious yawn videos. But when people held a cold pack against their forehead, cooling the brain from the outside, the yawning dropped off a cliff. Just cooling your head made the urge fade. They even found that if you breathe in through your nose, or press something cool to your forehead, you can sometimes stop a yawn dead in its tracks. Try it next time. It's a genuinely strange feeling, catching a yawn mid-launch and killing it. There's more. If yawning cools the brain, then it should depend on the outside temperature, and it does. Researchers found people are more likely to yawn when it's mild outside, around the temperature where cool air can actually do its job. But when it gets really cold or really hot, yawning tends to drop. In freezing air, a yawn doesn't help you, and might even make you uncomfortable. In blazing heat, the air coming in isn't cool enough to pull any warmth away, so there's no point. Your yawning tracks the weather, which is a bizarre thing to learn about your own body. And here's a fact that quietly demolishes a lot of the simple explanations. Babies yawn before they are born. Ultrasound studies have caught fetuses yawning in the womb as early as around 11 or 12 weeks. Think about that. That tiny developing human isn't tired. It isn't bored. It isn't low on oxygen in the way we mean. And it certainly hasn't caught a yawn from anyone. So, whatever yawning is for, it's baked in deep, from before we take our first breath. Some researchers think that early yawning might actually be helping the brain and the jaw and the whole system develop properly, a kind of exercise for a body that's still under construction. Whatever it is, it's ancient and it's fundamental. Now, cooling isn't the whole story, because there's another big piece, and it's about waking up, sort of. You know the two moments you yawn the most? When you're winding down for sleep, and when you're dragging yourself awake. Yawning clusters around the borders between being alert and being drowsy. And that's the clue. A lot of researchers think yawning is tied to arousal, not that kind. Calm down arousal, meaning your level of alertness, how switched on your nervous system is. Yawning seems to show up right when your brain is shifting gears, from asleep to awake, from awake to asleep, from engaged to bored, from calm to bracing for something. It's like a little system reset, a jolt to help your brain change states. And this is where it gets genuinely surprising, because it flips the whole yawning means you're tired idea on its head. Watch what happens right before people do high-pressure, high-stakes things. Paratroopers have been observed yawning right before they jump out of a plane. Olympic athletes yawn in the moments before they explode off the starting block. Musicians yawn backstage before they walk out in front of thousands of people. These people are not bored. They are not sleepy. They are about to perform at the absolute limit of what their body can do. So why yawn? Because if yawning cools and resets the brain, then a yawn right before a big moment might be your body priming itself, clearing the fog, sharpening you up, getting you ready to fire on all cylinders. The yawn isn't a sign of weakness there. It's a launch sequence. So the next time you catch yourself yawning before a job interview or a big presentation, don't panic that you look tired. Your brain might be tuning itself up. Okay, deep breath. Because now we get to the part that's honestly the strangest of all, the contagious part. And be honest with yourself right now. How are you doing? We're a good chunk into a video that has said the word yawn probably 30 times. Any twitches yet? Any watering eyes? Keep an eye on your own jaw, because we're about to talk about it directly, and that tends to make things worse. Here's the mystery. Roughly half of people, when they see someone else yawn, or hear a yawn, or even read the word, will yawn themselves within a few minutes. It's one of the most reliably contagious behaviors we have, and nobody made you do it. It jumps from person to person like a little social virus. So why? Why would one person's yawn reach across a room and pull an involuntary response out of a total stranger? For a long time, the leading answer has been one word: empathy. The idea is that catching a yawn is a byproduct of your brain being wired to connect with other people, to feel what they feel, to mirror them. And the evidence for this is pretty compelling once you look at it. Because contagious yawning isn't random, it follows your relationships. Studies have found you are most likely to catch a yawn from a family member, a little less likely from a close friend, less again from an acquaintance, and least likely of all from a complete stranger. The closer the emotional bond, the more contagious the yawn. It travels down the exact same lines as empathy itself. That is not a coincidence anyone expected. And it goes further. Young children barely catch yawns at all. Contagious yawning tends to kick in around the age of 4 or 5. Right around the same time, kids are developing the ability to understand that other people have their own minds and feelings. The empathy machinery comes online, and the contagious yawn comes with it. There's also research suggesting that children on the autism spectrum who can experience empathy differently are sometimes less susceptible to catching yawns. Every one of these threads seems to point the same direction. Contagious yawning is empathy leaking out through your face. And then there's the fact that makes everyone in the room go quiet. Researchers have looked at whether people who score high in psychopathic traits, cold, low empathy, manipulative traits, catch yawns the same way everyone else does. And in at least one well-known study out of Baylor University, the answer was no. The higher someone scored on measures of psychopathy, the less likely they were to catch a contagious yawn. Now, and this is important, don't go accusing your friends. This does not mean that if you don't yawn during this video, you're a secret psychopath. It's a statistical trend across groups, not a diagnosis of any one person, and plenty of perfectly warm, empathetic people just don't catch yawns easily. But it is a genuinely eerie little window. The thing that makes you helplessly mirror another human being might be tapping into the same wiring that makes you care about them in the first place. And in the people who feel that connection the least, the mirror goes a little dim. It's not just us either. This is one of my favorite parts. Dogs catch yawns. If you yawn a real, audible yawn, your dog may well yawn right back. And here's the kicker. Studies suggest dogs are more likely to catch a yawn from their own owner than from a stranger. The same closeness pattern we see in humans shows up between species, between you and your dog. Chimpanzees catch yawns from each other, so do some other primates. This is an ancient cross-species thread of connection running through your living room, between you and an animal that can't speak a word of your language. So that's the beautiful story. Yawning is empathy. It's connection. It's your brain reaching out to sync with the people you love. It's a lovely explanation. And here's where I have to be honest with you, because good science doesn't just tell you the pretty version. Not everyone is convinced, because some researchers pushed back and said, hang on, maybe this isn't about feelings at all. Maybe contagious yawning is something much older and much more mechanical, a reflex. A study out of the University of Nottingham took a different angle entirely. They used a technique that can stimulate the motor cortex, the part of your brain that controls movement, and they found they could actually turn people's yawning up or down by messing with that region. It suggested that the contagious yawn might be less a warm emotional echo and more a kind of primitive automatic reflex, hardwired into the motor system, the same way flinching is. And they found something you might have felt yourself. When they told people to resist the urge to yawn, people didn't yawn less. They just yawned differently, and the urge actually got stronger. Trying not to yawn can make it worse, which, if you've been fighting one this whole video, you already know. So who's right? The empathy camp or the reflex camp? And the honest, unsatisfying, kind of wonderful answer is we still don't fully know. It might be both. The reflex might be the machine, and empathy might be the thing that decides how easily the machine gets triggered by the people around you. After thousands of years of humans yawning at each other, this simple, silly, everyday thing still hasn't been completely solved. There's a real mystery sitting inside your own face. Now, before we wrap up, one quick thing that actually matters, because it could be useful to someone watching. For the overwhelming majority of people, yawning is completely normal and completely harmless. You yawn a bunch of times a day, you don't think about it, end of story. But in rare cases, a sudden, dramatic spike in yawning way more than normal, for no clear reason, that just won't stop, can occasionally be the body flagging something else going on. Yawning is tied into your nervous system and your brainstem. So, excessive yawning has been linked in some cases to things like certain medications, or neurological conditions, or a drop in blood pressure. I'm not saying this to scare you. Please don't diagnose yourself off a yawning video. I'm just saying if your yawning ever suddenly changes in a big, strange, persistent way, it's a perfectly reasonable thing to mention to a doctor. That's it. That's the whole health warning. So let's bring it home. Why do you yawn? It's probably not about oxygen. That classic answer basically fell apart under testing. The leading idea is that it cools your overheating brain, like a radiator flushing out heat and pulling in cool air. It's tangled up with alertness, with switching gears, with priming you right before big moments, which is why paratroopers and athletes do it at the worst possible time. It shows up before you're even born, so it's woven deep into what we are. And when it jumps from one person to another, it might be empathy leaking out through your face, following the exact map of who you love the most, or it might be an ancient reflex buried in your motor cortex, or, most likely, some strange marriage of the two that nobody has fully untangled yet. For something you do without a single thought, thousands of times a year, it turns out to be one of the last little unsolved mysteries riding around inside your own body. And now for the real test. Be honest with me. Somewhere in the last 18 minutes did you yawn? Because I said that word more times than I can count, and if the science is right, a lot of you didn't stand a chance. Tell me in the comments how many times you caught one. And if you made it through this entire thing without yawning even once, well, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to leave that hanging there. Take care of that magnificent overheating brain of yours, and I'll see you in the next one.